It's the most wonderful time of the year. Is it really? Stress of holiday shopping for endless lists and social functions, or no social functions with no invites, or feeling sad when everyone around you is feeling happy, or are they really happy, or are they just faking it? It's our social media that says we're happy, but that's just an edited life, and so the spinning is in a continuous circle. And yet for many, the chance to cry or to have an outlet to escape or just to be able to talk to somebody is just a call away. And so with that being said, I want to welcome you to episode 45 of Living Your Life with Leanne Lang, the podcast brought to you by Extension Marketing. And for more information, you can always head to extensionmarketing.com. Leslie Scott from the Distress Centre of Ottawa is joining us with a very realistic outlook of what people are really going through and what is going on behind those closed doors. Leslie, great to have you here.
Yeah, great to see you again.
I know. We've had so many chats.
We have in the past, 10 years, I guess?
I think so. How long have you been there?
Well, I've been with the Distress Centre for over 6 years now. And then previous life with marketing and whatnot before, it was another 4 or 5 years before that. So
I always look forward to you being on. You're such a dynamic speaker and really passionate about, what it is that you do and the people that you're helping. But I always found it really difficult to be able to get in this topic in a 4 to 5 minute segment.
It is.
When there's so much more to it.
We can talk forever about the subject, right? Because with mental health, it doesn't mean that you have a mental illness or that you're suicidal. It's your every day is your mental health. And you could just be having a really crummy day, and that's affecting your day and your mental health.
This is going to be, we'll kind of break through as we go through the podcast, exactly what is going on, the calls that are being taken in, the volunteers, which I think are a massive, massive part of it. But I was fascinated by the numbers because I think we were close to 60,000 calls expected, right? Yes.
And that number has grown from 2012. We were answering about 38,000 calls at that point. So in 6 years, we're going up to almost 60,000 calls that we're answering.
That's a big shift.
It's a huge shift. That's almost 20. Well, it's just about 20,000 calls that we're increasing in 6 years.
This is not something I think that you originally thought you were going to be doing. As you can probably tell, Leslie's actually quite comfortable on a mic in a radio. Like there was a point, where you thought you'd be broadcasting in a different sense when you were growing up.
Years ago, I was in the radio world. I went to school for radio broadcasting and worked in Brockville for a couple of years. And then I worked in Ottawa for a couple of years and then made a shift to a different corporate job. I did that for 4 years. And then I just got tired of saying, I'm not helping anybody. I don't feel like I'm helping anyone, and feeling that disconnect from my community and my city as a whole. So I started looking in the not-for-profit world, and lo and behold, the Distress Centre came up and piqued my interest, and here I am.
Yeah, and you've stayed in it, and you've been wonderful for them in terms of getting the message out. But it's a big shift when you're going from that corporate setting and the go, right?
Yes.
to be able to make the shift. Like, were you one of those kids that just liked being the kid in the playground helping the other kids? Like, was it
always
okay?
Always. My mom always said that. She said, I always thought you were going to be a teacher because you were always there and helping other people to learn. And I said, well, I look back now, and being in marketing, it's sort of the same thing. And helping people learn about the Distress Centre has been a really great project for me the past 6 years, because we're just raising awareness all the time and constantly with new ways, new social media, and just getting out and about and like doing podcasts like this with you. You're reaching new people all the time.
Well, you're reaching people who are dealing with an issue that is a constant.
Yeah.
It could be a constant, or it could be a seasonal, or could be just a certain situation.
Yeah.
And so I would think that the job for you, while similar things happen every day, there's always a shift. There's always something different in a day.
Always. That's the great part about my job, is that no 2 days are the same. And it's funny, when I went on maternity leave and I was trying to train my replacement for the year, she said, so what do you do every day? And I went, you're going to figure that out on your own, but here's what we need to do every day to make sure that we're getting our message across. But my job goes all the way from running our website, our social media, to doing stuff like this with you, and everything in between.
And understanding the calls that are coming in and the people that are taking the calls, the volunteers that are coming in.
Yeah.
I know there's volunteer coordinators. Like, there's so much that's involved in taking those 60,000 calls. This is the time of year. I thought this was timely to do it right around the holidays, because is there an increase? Like, what happens at this time of year?
So it's sort of twofold. So we have a lot of people that are dealing with situational anxiety, situational depression. I don't have anywhere to go. My finances are too tight. I can't afford to get any Christmas gifts for my kids because I have to put food on our table. Those are sort of the more immediate stressors that are happening. Then we have the people who push everything out of their day. And they're going, I just have to get through my to-do list, and I'll deal with X, Y, and Z tomorrow. And then X, Y, and Z gets moved into the next day, and then the next week. And then come January 1st, January 2nd, January 3rd, when the Christmas holidays are sort of wrapped up, they start feeling that letdown. They feel the panic. They start going, oh my gosh, I spent so much money. My credit card bill is going to be atrocious. How am I going to pay for this? They saw too many family members. They had, it's just, there's so much that just adds up. And those people are the ones that we see the influx of calls in January, February, March. But we're dealing right now with the people who are dealing with the immediate.
That's interesting that you say that. You have the immediate stressors right now, but that it's more January, February, March, the repercussions.
Yes, exactly.
Is that it? The repercussions of what the holiday brought?
Yeah. And I mean, it could be as simple as Aunt Betty came for dinner and made a comment as to why you're not married to your partner yet and you've been together for 5 years. And that can just be triggering for some people. Or it could be that you burnt your turkey, or, maybe your family just didn't show up for the holidays and you were expecting them to.
How are you prepared for each of the calls that come in? Can you go through the numbers and the ages? And I know that there's a difference between the men and the women who are calling. Can you give us of an overlay?
So what's really nice actually is to see that men are calling us more. It used to be that we were 70% women that were calling and only 30% men. We're almost at the 50-50 mark now. Which is really nice to see, because men for the longest time were always the breadwinners, and I'm using air quotes when I'm saying this, and they're the ones that were coming home and they were just strong for their family. They did not discuss their mental health. They didn't talk about what was going on in their lives, and so it's nice to see them talking about things more now. So with that, it also differentiates between men and women what kind of subjects they're calling about too, right? We get women who call about infertility and pregnancy loss and grief, whereas men may be struggling with other issues in their life, or cancer diagnosis, or just mental health on the whole, and depression. The calls that come through, we need to be prepared for, but we don't have that great technology that'll say, that's a suicide call, I need to get ready with my assist training, or, okay, that's just somebody who's looking for a community resource. So our training that we give our volunteers who are on our phone lines is extremely intensive, so that we're prepared for any of those calls that come through.
Okay, on any given day, could you see any one of those situations?
Absolutely. Every call that comes in, we're answering about 170 on average a day. So again, we could be answering a call from somebody who's just had a really bad day at work. They want to vent before they get home to their families. Or we could have somebody who is literally standing on the side of a bridge wanting to end their lives.
You've seen those situations come through?
Absolutely.
Okay. I can't imagine being on the other end of a phone.
Yeah.
With goodness in my heart, wanting to take a call and help somebody, and to realize that someone is in that much pain.
Yeah, it's our training is really second to none. And I'm not just saying this because I work for the Distress Centre, but when I started, I took the training myself because I need to be able to support our volunteers and help on the phones when needed. It was honestly the best education I have ever taken in my life. It's so eye-opening. Like, sometimes, I've had a really crummy day. You're welcome to have a crummy day. That's your right as a person to have a crummy day. But when you hear and feel the pain that somebody else is going through, you're going, wow, this is what I meant to do. This is why I'm helping people. This is why I'm here.
Okay, so can we go through that? Because this was the start of your career, right?
Yeah.
So take us through, you start a training process like this. And if I can go back even further steps, how does one even get to be able to decide or to say, I'd like to be able to do this? I have this sense of being that I want to be able to help others to get on a list like this.
And that's the first thing is knowing that you have that in you to help somebody. And we all do. And, you know, when you hear that somebody says, oh, I take calls and help prevent suicide from happening, and people go, oh, I can't do that. You can. It just takes the right training and the right mindset to be, okay, I need to absorb how to help somebody. And it's a lot about active listening. So if somebody is interested in becoming a volunteer, visit our website, because there's so much information on there. And that's www.dcottawa.on.ca, sorry. And it has all these frequently asked questions like, what do I do in this situation? And how do I become a volunteer? What kind of background do I need? Really, you just need to be a compassionate human being. We'll do the rest. We'll train you.
How long is the training?
60 hours. So we're not just taking somebody off the street and handing them the phone and saying, okay, good job, good luck, here we go, and, you know, help save people. It's, you really need to learn how to actively listen. We talk about limits and boundaries with callers. We talk about empathic assertiveness, grief, like all the different kinds of mental illnesses. So bipolar, schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, anxiety, depression. We go through all of these, and all this training has been developed in-house over the past 49 years. And then on top of that, all of our volunteers have to go through the Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training Workshop, which is a 2-day workshop on how to help prevent suicide and how to recognize those key phrases and characteristics of somebody who may be experiencing suicidal ideations.
Are you able to share what some of those key phrases are?
Absolutely,
like, you know, like what when we're listening to a conversation are trigger points?
So if you had somebody who in your life was dealing with a lot, and then suddenly they were saying, you know what, I'd really like to give you this out of my life. So it could be something materialistic. It could be a prized possession of theirs. It could be an animal. It'd be like, Leanne, I really want you to take my dog because I think you're just going to give him a really good home. What would your response be? Why? Why? I can't take your dog. Like, that's your dog. Why would you want to give me your dog? It could be that you see somebody who has been, you know, dressed to the nines for their 10 years of their life. And then suddenly they start letting their looks go a little bit. And then their hygiene starts going. It could be that this person was super social for a good chunk of the time that you've known them. And then suddenly they're isolating themselves and withdrawing from social scenes. Those are all just sort of messages. And when we're hearing them on the phone, we're hearing people say, there's just no point anymore. What do I have to live for? Why, who would even miss me? Those kinds of things are triggering for us to go, are you thinking of suicide? And that's the hardest question to ask.
I was going to say, do you ask that question?
We have to, because at that point when we're concerned, we need to know if they have a plan of action to end their lives. And sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. If they say yes, we start utilizing the assist workshop, and there's a triangle of how we work and getting them to a safe place, making a safe plan with them, getting them immediate help if they need it. Sometimes we have people who are calling us and have already started the suicide attempt process, and we need to intervene. We ask them if we can call an ambulance or police on their behalf, because we don't want anything to happen while we're talking to them. We keep them on the phones. We call paramedics. I will say 95% of the time we are able to de-escalate the caller with using the Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training, and then helping them get to a safer place, making a safe plan for the next hour, the next 5 hours, the next day. So, and then sometimes we hear back from them and they say, thank you for helping save my life. And sometimes we hear from the families and say, they told us what you did. Thank you so much. We had no idea that they were struggling.
That's the scary part right there.
Yeah. We don't know when we hang up the phone, right? We don't know when they're done, if they're going to call us back. So with the training that we do, we also train our volunteers to talk to us after a shift.
I was going to say, like, my God, you're volunteering your time, and then you're left with this heavy burden of someone, unraveling. Like, how do you then kind of pick up and go home and
Yeah.
continue on, with your day?
Yeah, so caregivers in general have a higher risk of developing what's called compassion fatigue. So that's somebody, if say you were taking care of somebody in your life who was mentally ill or struggling with depression or whatnot, and you were taking all the time to help alleviate some of their stress and symptoms, what happens to you? You start to burn out. So that's sort of what happens with volunteers sometimes, is that they start to burn out a little bit. So we start to recognize signs in, are they showing up for their shifts on time? How are they talking to us in the office? How are they talking to the callers? And we are able to sort of go, are you okay? Do you need to talk? And sometimes they'll just come and sit. We have an open door policy. Sometimes they'll just come and sit in our office and just sit, not say anything. They just need a minute.
Do they sometimes need that after hanging up the phone on a call?
Yes. So they'll come in, they'll say, can I debrief with you? I just need to talk. And the great thing is that all calls that come through the Distress Center are confidential within our four walls, so that they know that they can come and talk to us, and they don't have to take that home and feel like they can't talk to their partner about anything because they've already debriefed with us, which is great. And then we also have a shower, like, because we're 24/7, we, people are there overnight. And some people just like to go and physically wash off their 4-hour shift.
They're there for 4 hours.
4 hours at a time. Yeah.
And could they be on the call for an entire 4 hours with one individual? Like, how long does a call usually last?
On average, a call is anywhere between, let's say, 15 to 20 minutes. And that's a call where the caller has talked about what's going on in their lives. We've talked about coping skills. We've looked up any kind of community resources that would maybe help them, such as support groups or an AA meeting, or if they're looking for drug counseling, whatever. Longer calls are ones that are typically more severe. Somebody is going through a manic episode. Somebody is going through a big stage of grief. Or the ones that are about suicide are the ones that are quite a bit longer. On average, even those calls are usually under an hour, because we're able to de-escalate the caller or get immediate help.
When you talk about de-escalate the caller, at that point, sometimes you're talking about having paramedics or having someone, other intervention, help the situation.
And again, that's if the caller is at an immediate risk for death, or if they say, I need to go to the hospital, can you please call me an ambulance? Or we're saying, can we get you to the hospital? Can we call first responders for you?
Do you have to ask that question?
We do, yeah, because it's still their choice. It's one of those things where we want to empower them to make the choice to live, because you do, no matter what is going on in your life, you have to want to live. And we still have to ask that question though. Like, can we send an ambulance for you? We want you to be safe. We don't want anything to happen. We're there to help prevent tragedy. You
have these calls that come in. At what age are the calls starting?
We've had callers as young as 10, which is really hard to hear sometimes. Mental health starts pretty much at birth, really. If you're born with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, that can start right at birth. There's great other organizations that work with kids. We will take any age. The majority of calls on average are sort of between the ages of 25 to 45. That's our biggest lump of the demographic. But we take calls all the way up to 100 years old.
Where are the callers then? If you're saying the average is 25 and up, where are those calls being made for those that are like adolescents, 14, 15, 16, 17? Like, where are they making their calls?
They're making their calls from school. They're making their calls at home when mom and dad are asleep, and they're talking about real.
Are they calling? Is that age calling?
Yeah, they are calling, and it's growing.
How have those calls changed from what you might have seen 10 years ago to what the issues are facing adolescents now?
I mean, social media is number one, right? There's so much social media with tweens and teenagers that parents don't see, regardless of how much we monitor the kids' technology. Their problems are just different than what it was 10, 15, gosh, even 5 years ago. They've changed. The bullying, the opioid crisis is huge with that demographic, right? The kids are experimenting more with drugs, and the fentanyl is in everything, right? So we see a lot of kids who are dealing with sexual abuse. We have a lot that are dealing with assault at school. So that could just be verbal assault even. But the bullying is still a big thing with social media right now.
The bullying aspect of being bullied on
social media. All it takes is an instant message, right? And then all of a sudden you've got 4, 5, 6 different people that are messaging you and saying like, oh, nobody likes you, you have no friends, you know. And honestly, in today's society, saying you're gay is not an insult at all. But, kids are still using that as a term, as an insult.
So a volunteer answers the phone with a 16-year-old going through bullying online. The protocol is different than it was 10 years ago.
It is. And I mean, we need to work with that adolescent even differently than we would with a 25-year-old, and talk about how they can start keeping themselves safe and deleting people from their profiles and locking down their profiles more. And again, we are wanting to empower our callers, even if they are 16, to make those decisions for themselves. And it's actually great. There's a lot of celebrities in the news who are saying, and that their kids are looking up to, saying, it's been so freeing getting rid of my Instagram. I got rid of Snapchat. My life feels so much lighter. You don't have that pressure to always be on. You talked about, having your life through a filter. And that is what the kids are dealing with now. Their life through a filter. Everything looks great until it's not.
Yeah, I look at these issues, and you were mentioning something because you said people are calling it and there's sexual abuse in there. Mm-hmm. So that triggers for me.
Of course.
You hear a caller that is going through something like this. Mm-hmm. If it's at home and it's physical abuse or there's sexual abuse, is there intervention? Like what happens in these cases?
So we are mandated, just as any other organization would, if there is a child in danger with abuse in any form, we need to notify the Children Aid Society and the police. We cannot let that go. That is our mandate, to make sure that child is safe. So we have to dispatch.
You will?
Yeah, we have to.
There's no privacy. This is just a call that comes in, and
we have
there
to.
Is that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to. There's nothing in this world that is right with hurting a child. So we have to make sure that child is safe if that happens.
Have there been instances of that?
There have in the past. It's a very hard topic for our volunteers to have on the phone too, because again, it's just so wrong, and that sits with them a lot. So we definitely make sure our volunteers are okay if they get a call like that. But the partners that we have at these organizations, Children's Aid Society, at the Ottawa Police, they are just phenomenal people at making sure that what we're telling them gets done, and
there's a follow-up.
Yeah.
There's a constant follow-up. And you would think that you need to have these relationships between all of the organizations, because mm-hmm. once you've hung up the phone, the real work also needs to start.
Absolutely, right? Like you can think of the Distress Center as a support intake. So a lot of the times somebody will say, well, I'm feeling this way. Okay, well, have you talked to your doctor? Do you have a psychologist? Do you have a psychiatrist? Do you see a naturopath? So we're sort of like those intake calls too. And when people are looking for a community resource. But again, with the hospitals, if somebody is suicidal, we can let the hospital know we have somebody who asked us to call an ambulance on their behalf. So we're just letting you know that they're coming. We also work really closely with the Ottawa Paramedic Services, so that when they get a call of somebody who is in a mental health situation, they can link us with their caller so that they have a mental health support while the paramedics are on their way.
So if someone has called paramedics, 911, rather than the distress center, that there's your training assisted in the call as the paramedics are dealing.
Exactly. So they can call us and we can be talking to the caller while the paramedics are on the way and still on the line while they're being dispatched.
How important has that partnership been, that you're all working together?
Amazing, actually. We're going into our 3rd year now with them, and they just working with them is so great because they're going, you alleviate a lot of our stress on how to help these callers while we're being dispatched, because ambulances, as we know, they go in levels of triage, right? So somebody who's having an immediate heart attack is going to be a level 1, whereas if somebody has fallen down the stairs and maybe has a broken arm, the ambulance might not get there for 45 minutes. So but
if someone is in a suicidal state,
we're able to talk to them and use our assist program while the ambulance is on their way.
Are there an increase in number? I know that we mentioned this when we were originally talking off the top, that you'll get a spike right now during this time, and then the spike returns for January, February, March. But what is happening now over the next kind of 2 weeks of social events, lack of funds, lack of social event? What is the sense in that environment?
Yeah, we have to remember that not everybody's invited to 14 different parties between now and Christmas and New Year's.
This podcast is brought to you by Extension Marketing. They are a new breed of marketing agency that acts as your virtual marketing department, designing and implementing cost-effective marketing strategies that will grow your business. I can speak to this personally, as I've been using the Extension Marketing team to help me launch and grow my business. Founder Pat Whalen has been a lifesaver for me, a genuine coach guiding me along the way into uncharted territory. Tell them you're a friend of the show and receive a free 1-hour consultation. Check them out at extensionmarketing.com.
There are people who are completely isolated and don't have anybody and just see the Christmas and New Year's season go by like it's any other day.
Any other day, still a
very dark day. Yeah. You have the people, the food bank right now is experiencing a high level, probably higher than they have ever seen, of people who can't afford to feed their families. And, those kinds of calls come in pretty well every day going, where do I go? I don't have, we have a can of tuna in our house and I don't get paid for another 2 weeks. Everything went to my bills. I don't know how to feed my family. Those are big stressors. We have to remember that it's not just all about the turkey and whatnot on Christmas Day and being invited and you're stressed and, oh my God, I have to go buy 15 different presents for my kids' teachers. And some people don't have any of that. So those calls are coming through. And we're just going, we're here for you and we'll help you in any way that we can to help find you support that you need.
That's a different support. I mean, there's one thing to be able to call the Ottawa Food Bank, but that's a situation that you could be on a call every day with these individuals until they're able to get their footing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have repeat callers who call us every single day because we do become their support system in a sense, and we become their friends and we're there for them to talk to. And it's nice actually to hear when we hear people calling back and saying, you guys, I talked to you for 4 days last month and you really helped me. I got back on my feet. I was able to find the support I needed for whatever it was going on. So we love hearing those calls. The one thing I'd love to say though about Christmas Day, because we are 365 days a year, we are 24/7, our phone lines do not shut down. You think that people wouldn't want to work Christmas because they want to be with their families? It's the first shift that gets filled up every year. Our volunteers are I want to work on Christmas. No, that's my shift. I get that one last year. I want it again.
Why? What is the appeal that day?
They just love being there on Christmas Day and hearing callers call in, because the majority of callers on Christmas Day are calling to say thank you.
Really?
Yeah. They're just calling and I tear, I'm sitting here, you can see me, I'm tearing up. It's so nice to hear when a caller will say, I just wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas because you're here, you could be with your families, and you're here listening to me. And it's something special. So, it's pretty funny to actually watch our volunteers go, no, that's my shift. I want that one.
You don't see that in many places of employment, right?
No.
And it's not even employment, it's volunteer.
They're there on their own will and they want to be. And it's just such a special place. And every single day, obviously, but at the holidays, we're really reminded of how incredible our volunteers are to want to give their time.
When I was thinking about doing this podcast, there was a big part of me that was wanting people to know that there's outlets.
Yes.
And then there's also a big part of it, because I know the people that are listening to this are the types of individuals who are saying, this is maybe where I can find my volunteer or my giving back. And so it's so interesting to see on one topic, two very different sides.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like I said earlier, it's one of those things where you're like, I couldn't do that. There's no way I could be a volunteer. I couldn't help save somebody. You can though, because our training prepares you for everything that's going to come through the phone lines.
You have to be dedicated. 60 hours of training. And that weekend, that 2-day, for the suicide prevention.
Yep.
That's in there also.
That's in there as well. Plus you have a commitment of 1 year with us. So that's 200 hours. It seems daunting to hear those numbers, but really, if you have 4 hours a week to give for 1 year, that's your commitment. 4 hours. That's watching something on Netflix for a few episodes.
Yeah. I've just been into Outlander these days. Have you?
Homeland. We're watching Homeland.
It's just to lighten up the mood a little bit. I said to my husband the other day, I'm like, I need this to be done so I can get back to normal. Because I'm not a binge watcher, and I tend not to watch, I'm not watching a lot of television anymore as much as I used to. Yeah. But someone was like, you just got to give this show a chance. And it took me like maybe 6 episodes to get in. And now it's like, I'm just waiting for the kids to go to bed so I can play it. Or it's like, if I find like 20 minutes and like I can sneak onto my computer, like it's, so when you're talking about, can you find 4 hours? I'm like, I need this show to be done
so that
I can get my 4 hours back. Like I'm actually now scrolling through. I'm like, I just want to know what happens.
Yeah. That's Homeland.
So we all have it, but we all have those 4 hours. Yeah. Either you're Netflix binging or those are the 4 hours. Over the course of the week that you're doing. Do people do more than that?
You can. I mean, you're completely welcome. We have a retiree, and I know he's going to be listening to this after when we've posted it. He's incredible. He's been there for, I think, 7.5 years now, and he has given over about 15,000 hours on our phone lines. He's there easily 4 to 5 days a week.
Retired.
So he has the time. But he always says it's the best retirement job he's ever had.
That's amazing. And people are seeking purpose, and he seems to have found it.
And he's phenomenal. We always joke, we're like, okay, when we figure out cloning humans, we're just going to get about 18 of you.
And I would think being there 4 or 5 days a week, those hours, he's pretty much taken every call.
Every single call you can imagine. Yeah. He's all of our volunteers are phenomenal, and he's definitely one of the ones that our new volunteers and current volunteers look up to. He does a lot of our training with our new volunteers that come through, and he's definitely a role model.
How often are you circulating? How often are you offering the volunteer courses? Like, how often does this happen?
So we do training throughout the whole year except for July and August, just because summer is really hard for people to schedule when they have cottages and vacations and whatnot. So we start in September and we go all the way up until the beginning of June. We do evening classes Mondays and Wednesdays or Tuesdays and Thursdays, depending on the time of year. And then we also do a Friday day class. So you have options when you apply. You go through a pretty vigorous screening process. Again, we're not just taking anybody off the street.
Okay, let's go through the checklist right now, because if there are people that are thinking, okay, let's see where they might get a red flag, or where they're like, okay, this is worth my while. So when you want to become a volunteer, again, I encourage you to look at the website, because there is that commitment we just talked about. You want to make sure that, one, you're not going to be leaving the city in the next year for a big move or school or, something gigantic that's going to take you out of your commitment. Two, we want to make sure that you haven't had any huge life stressors yourself within the past year. So, that being like losing somebody in your family that you're grieving
strongly over. If you've been affected by suicide in the past year, if you yourself are struggling with your own mental health, it might not be the great time for you to apply to be a volunteer. We want to make sure that your mental health is good and stable, because a lot of calls can be triggering from those who are dealing with mental health issues as well. So, those are sort of the first few things. You want to just make sure that you're somebody who can really listen. So,
okay. When you talk, are we talking police check?
We do have police check.
I'm like, are that like you've left out like what are red flags? So there's a police check.
We need a police check, and that's to work with the vulnerable sector. So you get a letter from us to go and get your police check done.
Is that difficult? Like, some people might right off the bat go like, well, that seems like it's a lot of effort. Is it hard to do that?
No, actually, now the Ottawa Police now actually have it. You can do it online. Whereas before you'd have to go into the station, but now you can do it all online. You have hundreds of questions you have to answer, but it just takes no time at all, really. And it's about 3 to 4 weeks before you get it back.
Okay.
So, when you start to apply, the process can be fairly quick. We also need reference checks from you. And these reference checks can't be, your partner or your mom, or, we want to talk to employers. We want to talk to a professor. We want to talk to somebody who is going to vouch for you as a person in a great way. And the girl who does all of our screening will do an interview with each of those references, as well as you twice. So
I was gonna say, like, so it's not like you've got good old buddy over here going, hey, okay, you're gonna get a call.
Yeah,
it's a
process.
Full screening process, and they will be asking
tough questions. And even our application, we do all of our applications online. There's no right or wrong answer to the questions that we're asking. We just want to know more about the people that we're putting on our phone to trust, that our callers can trust to talk to. And even still, sometimes people get accepted as a volunteer and they start the training, and then we go, we're seeing red flags that didn't come up before. And we'll ask if they can politely leave the training and cut our losses there. Again, that's just because we want to make sure we have the right people that are on our phone lines providing the right kind of support.
It's an investment. You see this as an investment
Absolutely.
as well.
Yeah. If we break down the dollars to train each individual volunteer, it's about $1,500 that we absorb.
The cost.
So, yeah.
And how many do you have a year? How many volunteers?
We get about 400 applications a year.
Okay.
We train about 120. So you can see
400. Okay. Yeah. So even though you're applying, that doesn't necessarily mean you're getting in.
No.
400 applications to volunteer.
Yeah.
120.
Yeah, about that. When we train people, that's about as many as we get through the training course.
There's a real trust and confidence in them that there's the right people answering those phones.
Yeah, that's why our process is so vigorous.
I would think there's some life and death into who at any given day
Absolutely.
Who's picking up that phone.
Absolutely. And we need to be able, because we as staff aren't there 24/7, we need to ensure that when somebody is on our phone lines at 1 a.m. answering the call, that they're providing that adequate support.
How many staff are on hand at all times?
We
volunteers?
have 7 staff that are full-time in the office, normal office hours. And then we have what is called a leader. So a leader is on call for 24 to 48 hours. And those people are there as additional support to the volunteers. So if they need something overnight or after hours or on a weekend, they can call our leader.
How many people would be in the building at 2:00 in the morning?
Like 3 to 4.
So there's always a number of people in the office,
always.
In there,
yeah.
always, and just circulating in.
Yeah, and it's great, and they come out and they say hi, and I was in on the weekend picking something up from my office, and I had brought my daughter in with me, and they're hi, and talking to her and playing. Like it's really becomes a family feeling, and that comes from the training and the vigorous screening process.
Okay, so that's interesting. The number was 400, 120, about $1,500, and I know that this is a non-for-profit.
Yeah, that's the big thing. People don't think that we're actually a charity, that we're government run or that we have funding from the government. We don't.
You don't.
We are not for profit.
So where are the funds coming from?
We have some pretty awesome partners. So we work with a lot of the hospitals in the local area. And because the reach of our services go out towards Renfrew, SD&G, we work with the hospitals out there. We actually work with Nunavut and Northwest Territories as well.
Someone's calling from Nunavut and they're coming and it's being picked up here in Ottawa?
Yeah. So they don't have the capacity in Nunavut to answer their calls 24/7. So we answer after hours calls for them, and we answer Northwest Territories full time.
Okay. The calls coming from Nunavut are very different than the calls
Very.
coming from here.
Very different.
And especially looking at the history and the research and the numbers.
Yes.
I'm devastated when I look at the teen suicide rates.
It's awful.
It's horrific.
Yeah. And Nunavut actually just had, in Iqaluit, they just had one of two of their main grocery stores burn down. So you already think that they're suffering in terms of how much food gets carried up there, because it can only go by cargo. Like it's flown in. The prices, I mean, to pay for a head of lettuce up there is about $8. So you have to think like a pizza, like a Delissio pizza that you would put in your oven, when you come home from a football game on Friday night because you're hungry, up there is about $14. So it's to lose their grocery store and then have to see this increase in prices elsewhere on top of that was huge. So, we get calls about that, just going, okay, well, the grocery store, the other one is completely out of this, and this. And like,
I can't believe
formula for your baby. Like what happens if the grocery store's out of formula for your baby? So it's very different calls coming from up there.
But it's interesting, that I had no idea the reach that it's being patched through, so that they can, speak with someone to do that. You don't realize, like, we're going to bed at 11 o'clock at night, to realize that there are people working around the clock, just helping out others in the community. Yeah. The next 2 weeks, so we were talking about that, right? Yeah. It's like some people are calling because there's no money to buy the gifts, or some person's calling because Aunt Betty didn't like the turkey yet, and insulted you. And
it happens.
it does. Do people understand that the situational anxiety of this, like that it's situational? Are people able to sometimes differentiate that, or is it?
Sometimes when you're experiencing anxiety, you can feel like there's no way out of that anxiety, even if you've never experienced it before in your life and it's come out of the blue. It's one of those things where we have to work with the caller to be like, okay, let's work on some breathing exercises. Let's inhale, count to 3, exhale backwards from 3, and just help them get breathing again. Because sometimes we pick up the phone and they're hysterical or they're crying and we can't make sense of what's happening.
I would think for somebody who's never made a call, making that call just dialing is a huge.
You and I have talked about this before. We consider that a huge act of bravery and courage to pick up that phone, because you don't know who you're talking to. You don't know us. Sometimes it is easier to talk to somebody you don't know, because as human nature, we want to give our advice. So this is what worked for me. You should do this too. But picking up that phone to talk to somebody you don't know, that's a big act of bravery. And
you could be calling, you're hysterical.
Yeah.
You're angry. You're having trouble breathing.
Yeah.
Like in a panic attack.
You're sweating. Yeah. Panic attack is a great word. You're sweating. Things are flashing, lights are around you. You may be dizzy. You don't know what's happening. If you've never experienced a panic attack, it's terrifying. So to make that call and going, okay, I'm going to call because I heard a commercial, or I heard Leanne's podcast, or I saw a bus ad. I'm going to call. Maybe they can help me. We're there to help them. Let's work together to calm down. And then let's talk about what's going on. Then let's talk about the coping skills.
Yeah. So there's the initial, evaluate the situation and just get them.
Exactly.
But I would think, right, for that first time caller, there's something's triggering.
Yeah.
To put them in that position.
Yeah, there's something going on in their lives. And sometimes it's a series of events that are going on in their lives. Again, let's go back to the stressors of the holiday season right now. You might be the socialite of your city right now. And you may be going, I'm going to this charity gala, and then I have to go do a photo shoot with this. And then my boyfriend's company is doing this big party. And then we're going to the 67s hockey game with the kids and, X, Y, and Z. And then you're going, how do I fit all this into my day? I'm so stressed. And then all of a sudden that panic starts to go in and going, I don't have time for this. I don't know what to do anymore. I can't continue on my life like this. I'm exhausted. And then the panic starts to kick in. And again, on the other side, you might be going, I don't have any money. I don't know what to do. My life is not worth living anymore. And then a panic attack kicks in. So it's interesting on different sides of the spectrum.
Where do you see this going as mental health becomes more and more of a topic that's being talked about more freely, being accepted in a different sense? This distress center is just, I mean, we saw the numbers increase by like 20,000 over the last couple of years. Where is this going? Where is this type of treatment or therapy? Like where's the trend of this going?
Well, we're happy to say that we're going to be celebrating our 50 years next year, which for any business is a huge accomplishment, let alone a not-for-profit who sees continuous growth. We already have some services that are starting up next year that are going to be new for us. So that trend of getting the awareness out and our services there is still going to be moving upwards and onwards. But, and it's great to see that people are talking about mental health, and we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go to being completely acceptable and talked about freely. There are so many amazing mental health advocates in our community that are doing a fantastic job of saying, just talk about it. But we need the funds to keep it going too, right? Like we think about where we're making our charitable donations, and I'm going to do a shameless plug here. We don't get as many donations as one would think, because I don't think a lot of people know that we are a not-for-profit organization that we talked about before.
Mm-hmm. People can check out the website?
Yeah, it's dcottawa.on.ca, and there's all different ways that you can donate. It doesn't have to be monetary. It can be an in-kind gift. We have an online store that we opened up, so if you're looking for a Christmas gift for somebody, that's a great way to support the Distress Center as well. But the trend is still going to be onwards and upwards for us, regardless of what is going on in the world, because people need us, and our services are proving time and time again to be vital and integral in the community.
Well, absolutely. And growing, especially with the partnerships that you now have with the hospitals and the paramedics. So to see that you're all working on this together. The phone to call.
Yeah.
What is the phone line?
613-238-3311. And that is 24/7.
Every day, 365.
Every day. Yeah. No matter what. Our phone lines don't shut down. When we lost power at the tornado,
yeah,
we were there on the phones until our batteries went out, and then we flipped a switch for our external power and kept those phone lines going.
And was it busy?
We had a lot of people that were dealing with immediate concerns. We talked about that, immediate stressors. And then we get people now who are calling us with post-traumatic stress disorder because they're feeling the effects afterwards from the storm.
But interesting, right? Like we're thinking our power's out.
Yeah.
But
I can't make my dinner. Like,
yeah,
oh my God,
but there were
McDonald's
people
again.
that were on phone lines at that point that were in need, and you were able to.
Yeah, we don't lose power. Even the ice storm you think about in 98 it was, we kept on going. Our phone lines were there.
Once again, the number?
613-238-3311.
And for people looking to volunteer, website?
dcottawa.on.ca/volunteer.
And they'll get all the information as
Everything
to how to
is
proceed
there.
there.
And anytime anybody wants to call and talk, and if they have questions about volunteering, we're there to help you.
So even someone could call the phone line and speak
absolutely.
with a volunteer.
Of course they could.
And have you had people call the phone line to speak to a volunteer to ask about what the process, what the volunteering is like?
We've had people call the phone lines for anything and everything. They're there. Sometimes we get people who call and are looking to get a taxi and it's a wrong number, but they end up talking to us about something else. So it's interesting. It's a really great place.
I just want people to know that if this resonated with you and that you're that person that might be able to give of themselves, maybe look through that volunteer,
Yeah.
It's a cutthroat from 400 down to 120, but if that's in your being, it might be a perfect outlet, especially as you were saying for retired people.
Yeah.
Where to be able to go. And if you need to speak with someone, there is someone there who's been trained, as you've heard, to be able to take that call and to be that resource that you need. So if you're in that position right now, especially over the holidays, or as Leslie said, in January, February, and March, when you're kind of going through the post-holiday emotions, definitely some place to be able to consider to call. Leslie, thanks so much for having the time to be able to talk about it today. And just a reminder that if people are listening, please like and share and subscribe and let people know about the podcast as we continue to see the Living Your Life with Landline podcast continue to grow. Wishing you fantastic holidays. Good luck with everything. And it's going to be okay.
It will be okay.
It's going to be okay. Have a great day.